News spoke with Commander.
Thank you. Please be seated. There are a lot of very important people in the room today, and I have to start by acknowledging all of you, and I have to start with, obviously, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, the Honorable Audrey Sewell, our Cabinet Secretary, permanent secretaries in attendance, and I see Ambassador Rocky Mead, I see Mrs. Arlene Williams from MEGJC, Mrs. Sansia Bennett Templar from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, and I see Dr. Kassan Troop from my ministry, the Ministry of Education and the rest. Her Excellency, the Honorable Audrey Marks, Jamaica's ambassador to the United States of America. It's really very good to have you here with us today. Mr. Richard Biles, the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica. We have one of our trade envoys here, Ambassador Dushyant Savadia, with us. Heads of public agencies and board chairmen and women. The National Partnership Council members, private sector leaders and partners, and there are several of them here. And I know when I looked around, I saw Mr. Sidney Thwaites from the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. I saw Mr. Metri Siaga, President of the PSOJ. I also think I saw the head of our Chamber of Commerce. All of the private sector leaders are in the room today. Have to acknowledge Mr. Keith Duncan, who's the chairman of our new oversight body, but was also the chairman of the Economic Program Oversight Committee, EPOC. Other leaders and representatives of civil society, and this includes people from youth-related organizations, faith organizations. We also have, obviously, members of the media with us, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Jamaicans watching and listening everywhere in the world. We are live right now on 5 radio stations, and we are also live on PBCJ and also across several of our government social media platforms. Today is a big day, and it doesn't really need any big preamble from me. It's a day where our Prime Minister is doing a major policy briefing to the country. And it is a day where we're going to be talking about the new Jamaica that we must continue to build towards our goal of peace, productivity, and prosperity for all Jamaicans. And so it's not going to be a lot of speeches today. There are only really 2 speakers. And we're going to start with our first speaker, the first woman to be Minister of Finance and the Public Service. The Honorable Favour Williams will join us to bring some remarks.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Prime Minister, Senator Dr. the Honorable Dana Morris Dixon, Minister of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, Senator Cavan Gale, Honorable Audrey Sewell, Cabinet Secretary, Permanent Secretaries, Her Excellency the Honorable Audrey Marks, Jamaica's Ambassador to the United States of America, Mr. Richard Biles, Governor of the Bank of Jamaica. We have our Trade Envoy, Ambassador Savadia, good to see you. Members of the National Partnership Council, private sector leaders and partners, other leaders and representatives of civil society, distinguished guests all, ladies and gentlemen, and the viewers online, good afternoon again. It is a delight and a pleasure to be here as we share with you our plans for the next chapter, which is a pivot to inclusive growth. I'm indeed fortunate to have inherited a stable macroeconomic environment with the lowest debt to GDP ratio that our country has seen in decades. Inflation is safely within the band of the 4 to 6% range, and unemployment is quite low. There has been much other work done that augurs in our favor, and I'm eager to see the Fiscal Commission begin.
Burlington Coat Factory.
Look at these low prices. I know.
Focus, we must now acknowledge that we are standing at an important crossroads in our country's economic development. So earlier today, the Prime Minister used the analogy of a strategic game of netball. That, Prime Minister, if you permit me, I'll share it with the audience. As you know, in netball, players constantly pivot. They literally stand with one foot firmly planted on the ground while maintaining balance. They assess the court by moving or pivoting on the other foot for the best opportunities to advance the ball forward towards the goal of higher, inclusive growth while maintaining fiscal discipline. Many of you may be wondering, what exactly is this inclusive growth? Inclusive growth is broad-based, wealth-creating, environmentally sustaining, provides a safety net for our most vulnerable, and more importantly, provide opportunities for all to benefit. As a former Minister of Education and Youth, I know that to get there will mean that we will have to continue to prioritize boosting human capital. As you may know, approximately 20% of Jamaica's non-debt budget goes into education, and as such, areas such as skills training through HEART and targeting the tertiary sector continue to be key. We will need to create higher quality jobs, an emphasis on which this administration has committed in numerous ways, such as the promotion and support in STEM-focused jobs. And we will also need to boost our climate resilience through the National Natural Disaster Fund policy, with its many layers of protection that enables funding for natural and other disasters. Recently, the World Bank remarked that Jamaica has made commendable progress towards inclusive growth through effective debt management, economic reforms, and the implementation of frameworks like the Inclusive Growth Index framework. However, ongoing efforts are necessary to address structural challenges and ensure that the benefits of growth are equitably distributed across all segments of society. This is what we are committing to while we maintain fiscal discipline and continue on the trajectory for debt to GDP reduction. Ladies and gentlemen, speech this afternoon. I look forward to working with the entire team to serve you, our stakeholders and partners, as we pivot towards growth, inclusive growth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister Williams, for that. And of course, as she said, today is all about inclusive growth, and that's what the Prime Minister will be speaking to, and there is no need for us to detain ourselves any longer. Please welcome the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the most honorable, the most honorable Andrew Holness.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Favor. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished Jamaicans, welcome to witnessing history in Jamaica. You will reflect on this moment as an historic moment. I'm filled with excitement and optimism today as I announce a significant transition in our national economic policy. Today, we turn the page to a new chapter in Jamaica's economic journey, a chapter of opportunity and a brighter future for every Jamaican. To appreciate this moment, we must first reflect on where we have come from. In 2013, Jamaica was at the edge of an economic precipice. We faced unsustainable debt levels, massive unemployment, literally the bankruptcy of the country. But out of that crisis, we found common resolve to take control of our destiny. We rallied around a national consensus. We focused on fiscal prudence, debt reduction, and macroeconomic stability. Through disciplined financial management, sound policies, but more so, the sacrifices of our people, Jamaica has achieved an extraordinary turnaround. We have halved our debt from 146% of GDP to very shortly to be under 70% of GDP. That's an amazing feat for any country, but especially for Jamaica. We have reduced the unemployment rate from 15% to a record low of 4.2%, even after revising how we calculate unemployment. We have increased our net international reserves from 0.9 billion to a record of 5.7 billion US dollars. Our external credit rating, as measured by S&P, has improved by 7 notches from the lowest level of selective default in 2013 to BB-. We are now just 3 notches away from achieving investment grade. Little Jamaica. We have institutionalized discipline in the management of our fiscal and monetary affairs, and the crowning moment of that will be the Fiscal Commission. But of course, we must recognize the fiscal responsibility framework, our fiscal laws that we have, and the independence of the central bank. No other nation in the world has matched the scale of Jamaica's economic turnaround in just under a decade. From being dismissed, from being dismissed as a basket case, yes, Jamaica is now celebrated as a global model of resilience and fiscal reform. It's the textbook case. It is the case studies of the business schools and the government policy schools. We have achieved even more than we set out to when we embarked on this path in 2009. So today, I can proudly say on behalf of every Jamaican that we have accomplished the mission of economic stability. You will notice that uncertain pause in accomplishing the mission, because nothing is ever at an end, and the effort must always be continuing. I prefer to use this other analogy. We have mastered the lessons from this chapter in our journey. It is not something that we're going to unlearn. In fact, you can't. We have learned how to ride that bicycle. We have learned that. That is now ingrained in us. So, now it's time to move to the next chapter. To learn something new and build on what we have learned before. This success that we now celebrate and mark officially was a national effort. And I believe it is important for me to stress this. And it is not my intention to lay singular claim to this. So let me express my deepest gratitude to all who played a role in this transformation. Leaders from both sides of the political aisle, business leaders, our civil service, unions, members of our civil society, but most importantly, you, the Jamaican people. In particular, the Jamaican worker. So I want to specially recognize and thank the Honorable Bruce Golding, former Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller, former Prime Minister, the Honorable Peter Phillips, former Leader of the Opposition and former Minister of Finance, the Honorable Audley Manayard Shaw, former Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clark, former Minister of Finance, Mr. Richard Biles, now Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, but former Chairman of the Economic Policy Oversight Committee, which played such an integral role in the transformation. Mr. Keith Duncan, who took over as Chairman of EPOC from Mr. Biles, and all the members of the National Partnership Council. Some of you are here today. I want to say thank you on behalf of the nation for your contribution and your work towards getting us to this point. But as I said, thanks most of all to the people of Jamaica for their patience, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Jamaica's turnaround would have been impossible without the willingness of the Jamaican people, and let me put it this way, without the understanding. We were not always willing, but we understood what needed to be done. So I want to thank the Jamaican people for their understanding and their endurance of the hardships that they have had to bear. We will never forget that. And no future government should ever forget the sacrifices that were made to get to this point. So it is my solemn pledge as Prime Minister that I will never allow Jamaica to return to those dark days when we were on the edge of the precipice. Having been on this path for the last decade, we can sometimes lose sight of the fact that stability was never the destination. Stability was one milestone in the journey, if that analogy works. Stability was the foundation in building the rest of the structure, in building the magnificent edifice of our prosperity. So we have built the foundation. We have reached the critical milestone. So the next chapter of our journey is about achieving transformative growth that uplifts every Jamaican. It is about inclusive growth where every Jamaican can see themselves, their family, their household, their community achieving and fulfilling their dreams and aspirations. This new chapter is about our economic independence. It is about generating our own opportunities and using our own resources to achieve our dreams and aspirations. This chapter is about us fulfilling our destiny as a great people. And I believe we can. Let me be clear. Moving on to the next chapter does not in any way mean that we're going to abandon fiscal prudence. We will never go back to run with it. Not under my watch. We have worked too hard and sacrificed too much as a country to ever go back to that. Good fiscal management and macroeconomic stability are now part of our DNA. Routine business for us. While our economic progress over the last decade has been nothing short of amazing, we must confront a critical reality. Our growth rate remains below the level needed to realize our full potential. Nevertheless, we have made some progress on the growth frontier. In the past, we would have a year or two of growth followed by years of decline. Now we experience consistent, sustained growth. We have had 20 consecutive quarters of growth before the pandemic, and we have had 13 consecutive quarters of growth since the pandemic. This is the longest period of economic expansion in our independent history. But it is still anemic and always at risk, given our persistent vulnerability to climatic events as a small island developing state. Over the last decade, real GDP growth has been less than 1% per annum. To achieve our national development goals, we need to significantly accelerate growth. Recent weather events and their associated impact make this call even more urgent. The preliminary damage and loss assessment associated with the passage of Hurricane Beryl is estimated at 32.19 billion Jamaican dollars, or 1.07% of GDP, meaning that we have lost that from our GDP. And I want that to sink in to the Jamaican people. Our GDP is smaller as a result of these weather events. And this has been compounded by Tropical Storm Raphael and the persistent rains associated with other weather systems. The cumulative impact of these weather events will undoubtedly result in a decline in gross domestic product for the latter half of 2024. Just like we did after COVID, however, our focus will be on recovering that lost ground very quickly. As we move to the next chapter of our development journey, we must now come together and forge a new national consensus on economic growth, just as we united around debt reduction and stabilization. It is time for us to set ambitious goals, to think big, and to focus on policies that will enable Jamaica to realize our immense potential as a nation. One of the greatest tangible achievements of our economic reform has been the reduction of unemployment. At 4.2%, Jamaica is at record low unemployment levels. In fact, it is safe to say that we are at full employment. But this achievement presents us with new challenges. We can no longer rely solely on adding more people to the workforce to drive growth. To reach the next level, we must shift focus to productivity. every Jamaican must understand that there is no growth without productivity. For our economy to expand and thrive, we need to achieve higher output per worker, higher output per hour, higher output per dollar of capital deployed. Productivity is not just a matter of how hard people work. It is a function of factors such as the level of investment in physical and human capital, which allows workers to work smarter and get more done with the same or less effort. Imagine if you are plowing a field and instead of using a fork, you used a tractor. You get much more plowing done. But it doesn't mean that you're lazier by using less of your physical effort. It just meant that you're smarter and you employed capital and technology and you got more done. Yes, you would still work, but you would accomplish more in the same amount of time. And that is what we mean when we say productivity. Finding better tools, skills, or methods to produce more value. Productivity is also a function of the quality of a nation's infrastructure. Efficient roads and ports reduce travel times and logistics costs for workers and businesses. This allows firms to produce and deliver goods faster, enabling workers to focus on higher value tasks. Improved transportation infrastructure would enable workers to commute to more productive jobs in urban and industrial areas, easing the burden of traffic, which I know detains some of you in getting here, in our urban and urbanizing areas. Better irrigation in rural areas would lead to higher output in agriculture. And indeed, better farm roads would lead to more output in our agricultural areas. The prevalence of violence and crime in our country also influences productivity. A recent IMF report on the cost of crime in the Latin American Caribbean region noted that firms that perceive crime as a major obstacle report lower labor productivity. Moreover, the more a firm has to spend on security, the fewer resources they have available for capital investment to increase productivity. And the less likely it is that those firms are able to innovate. Smaller firms are disproportionately affected by crime, often facing higher relative costs for security and greater vulnerability to operational disruptions. The economic burden of crime extends beyond immediate losses, affecting long-term potential growth. Improving all of these factors will be necessary to get Jamaica out of this trap of low growth and move us towards greater prosperity. When a nation becomes more productive, businesses grow, workers earn better wages, and the economy gets stronger, making life better for everyone. We must change our mindset towards productivity. Productivity is about working smarter. Unfortunately, there are those who, when they hear the term productivity, they immediately think,
are you dreaming of more freedom, more dough to thrive, and financial options to keep your dreams alive? If you can dream it, then bread provides.
we must change this mindset. Productivity is not asking you to constantly give up of your labor, to give up of your effort. What we are asking is for every worker to take a mindset of efficiency, how we can use our existing effort, our existing labor to produce more. And that means how we're going to work smarter, how we're going to integrate technology, how we're going to coordinate better, how management is going to arrange the business processes and the steps and the structures and the relationships such that all the factors of production produce more. We must change our mindset. Productivity is not punishment. Productivity benefits everyone. I will now outline the key pillars of our growth strategy, a strategy grounded not in endless deliberation, but in decisive action. I did not consider it necessary to appoint yet another committee to study the issue or draft new recommendations. That was already done. Between 2010 and 2012, the Planning Institute of Jamaica developed a growth inducement strategy in Jamaica. I remember the exact day when Prime Minister Golding called up some Jamaican economists and said, listen, we need a plan to grow. In 2016, the Economic Growth Council, chaired by the Honorable Michael Lee Chin, provided a comprehensive roadmap for achieving robust growth. And that is where you got the famous 5 and 4. More recently, the COVID Economic Recovery Task Force, chaired by former Minister Nigel Clark, developed actionable strategies to revitalize our economy in the wake of the pandemic. Jamaica does not suffer from lack of good ideas. We have no deficit in talk and ideas. We do that very well. What we have lacked is consistent, determined, and instrumental implementation. That is where we have fallen down. Implementation. And that is a key part of the growth strategy. I spend a lot of my time trying to implement things that were spoken about, dreamt about, debated about. For decades, I've tried to implement them. I can't say I've been exceptionally successful, but we have had a few wins. I count the national ID as one of them, which has been talked about from 1972. Last Friday, we issued the first set of our national ID, digital IDs. So the focus of this administration is to move beyond plans and policies and to deliver tangible results for the Jamaican people. The time for talk has passed. And yes, the time for action is now. First, we will relentlessly focus on human capital development. Currently, around 60% of our workforce has no formal training. 60%. This shortage of skilled labor is now a binding constraint on growth. Economists like to use this term. It really means that you can't grow unless you solve this problem. Skilled labor is a binding constraint on our growth. And we must solve this problem. I would refine it a little bit to say skilled labor aligned to the demands of industry is the real binding constraint on our growth, because we do have people skilled but not aligned. We have people investing in their education in areas that are not essential now for the output of the country. So to overcome this, we will invest heavily in preparing our people for the opportunities now and the opportunities that will come in the future. A comprehensive transformation of our education system is already underway with the implementation of recommendations of the Orlando-Patterson Commission report. While undertaking this comprehensive reform, we will make a priority of the basics. The basics. Literacy, numeracy, early childhood education, computer literacy. Those are basics. And if we get everyone in our workforce with those basics, then they become more trainable. And so the education system must maintain at least that, must achieve at least that for every student leaving school. Low literacy and numeracy rates among our children hinder progress in later life. Addressing these gaps early is critical to ensure a stronger pipeline of skilled professionals to drive the nation's growth. Many of our children enter primary school without the necessary pre-literacy and numeracy skills, creating a cycle of underperformance that persists through to secondary education. We have talked about this for years. We must now put an end to this and achieve the basic level of skills across our labor force. We will also strengthen technical and vocational education training programs and invest in upskilling and reskilling our workforce to prepare Jamaicans for high-value and higher-wage jobs. We are currently working on the establishment of the Jamaica Institute of Technology in partnership with the government of India and India's National Institute of Electronics and Information Technology. This will be a game changer for creating the labor force for the industries of the future for which Jamaica must position itself. We have already removed all tuition and administrative fees from HEART courses up to level 4 being associate degree, and we have removed the guarantee requirement for student loans. We have also implemented the LIFT program, and we are about to launch the CARE program for unattached youth. We have consolidated the skills portfolio, including HEART, with education to help to drive our focus on human capital development and to better integrate technical and vocational training in the education system. We are committed to leveraging technology to drive economic empowerment and support national skills development. The HEART Trust Skills on Demand app, which will be launched next week, is a digital platform designed to connect certified skilled professionals with individuals and business needing their services. This app is the latest development in a series of initiatives to ensure Jamaica has an efficient and seamless solution for accessing reliable technical workmen and women. I was in the field recently, and some young men engaged me in conversation. One of them was saying, there are many young men in my community, and we can't find any work, can't find any jobs. I was with a set of business persons last week, Friday, and they were saying to me, we have many vacancies, we just can't find people to work. So obviously there is asymmetry in information in the marketplace. And this app is designed to assist in bringing some form of clearing, helping the market to clear by providing information. So now at our fingertips, we will have a new resource that gives access to the HEART Trust trained and certified persons and professionals across the island. We expect that this will improve the labor market in terms of the clearing of the labor market between persons who are seeking jobs and industries and firms that have jobs. We will catalyze the development of new industries where Jamaica has unique comparative advantages. To diversify our economic base, we must prioritize sectors that will drive future growth. We have many opportunities that have been spoken of for a long time, but they just have not gotten off the ground. And I'll give a few examples. While we have made some progress in tourism linkages through the Agri-Linkage Exchange platform, ALEX, there is much more that can be done between tourism and the rest of the economy. By linking our agricultural sector with tourism, we can reduce imports, boost local production, and create a sustainable economic ecosystem between tourism and agriculture. This relies heavily, however, on the creation of long-term supply contracts. And the government intends to make serious interventions in this regard to ensure that our farmers can have long-term supply contracts with our tourism industry. Our strategic location positions us perfectly to become a global logistics hub. With geopolitical realignments towards nearshoring and friendshoring, now is the time for us to capitalize on this opportunity. We will make the necessary investments and foster partnerships to attract international trade and logistics companies. We will catalyze the long-awaited Caymanas Special Economic Zone project. Now, I know persons listening to this, as I am reading it, they're saying in the back of their minds, as I was saying in the back of my mind, we have said this before. I was reluctant in reading it, because it has been said over and over and over and over and over and over again. The truth is that we have made some progress in it. No doubt. You know, warehousing is a big industry in Jamaica now. We have, by virtue of the divestment of the port, by developing certain areas under special economic zone, we have established Jamaica as a logistics point. We're not yet quite a hub, but we have made certain steps towards it. But I'm here to say that we will break ground on the Caymanas project that we have talked about for so long. We won't be able to develop the entire Caymanas lands, but we're going to start with 30 acres, which will be developed using the Port Authority as the leader in this regard for this project. And that will be significant. In fact, it will be the anchor development for getting greater investments into Jamaica as a logistics hub. So I'm pleased to report here today that before the financial year is out, we will break ground on the Caymanas project, for which we have spoken about for more than a decade. The aging population of North America will drive massive demand for affordable, high-quality medical and residential services. Our world-class tourism and our location, just a short flight from major North American cities, places us in a prime position to cater to this market. We will integrate medical care with our wellness and leisure tourism sector, creating a compelling proposition for a holistic recovery experience in Jamaica. So this is not quite a new era. Again, we have been speaking about this, but the government intends to be instrumental in getting this new dimension of our tourism up and running. Our music, sports, and entertainment are world-renowned, but we have not truly maximized or monetized its potential. We will invest and monetize our cultural brand, ensuring that Jamaica reaps the full benefit of our rich heritage and creative talent. We will support our artists, musicians, athletes, and creators to monetize our unique brand on the global stage, ensuring that Jamaicans receive tangible benefits from the export of our culture. A prime example of this is the launch of the Jamaica Screen Development Initiative. In January of this year, I was pleased to launch the groundbreaking $1 billion fund for film in Jamaica. That's the first time, and I believe probably the only time, that any government has made a dedicated capital expenditure to support the development of the creative industry. And this is specific for the film industry. A signal that we are serious about monetizing and creating a real economic industry out of our creative assets. In order to thrive in the 21st century global economy powered by digital technologies, Jamaica must transition from being a consumer of technology to a regional leader in the production. You don't mind. Thank you, my dear. I was making the point that Jamaica must transition from being a consumer of technology to being a creator of technology. Our vision is to make Jamaica the Silicon Valley of the region. We have already started in making this vision a reality. Just last week, our new national ID system went live, and the first national identification cards were issued. This system is foundational to the creation of a digital society. We are making progress on the National Broadband Initiative, which aims to provide internet connectivity to all households and communities in Jamaica. We have connected over 600 schools and many police stations and government offices. On the skill side, the Amber Heart Coding Academy has trained 450 coders over the last 3 years, and we have implemented skills training programs in new and emerging areas such as optoelectronics, mechatronics, aerial robotics, and many other new and emerging fields. Our goal is to create an ecosystem that nurtures tech startups, support cutting-edge research, and attract global tech giants. By focusing on areas such as software development, AI, blockchain, and digital media, we can not only meet our own digital needs, but also export high-value tech solutions. For too long, we have spoken about potential growth sectors without fully capitalizing on them. That stops now. The next chapter will be about the action that is necessary to turn our aspirations into reality. Ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure rehabilitation and development remain central to our growth strategy. Investment in infrastructure is not just about improving today's conveniences. It is about unlocking the full potential of our economy and creating opportunities for generations to come. No previous government in Jamaica's history has invested more in infrastructure development than this administration. From modernizing our road networks, expanding access to water, upgrading airports, modernizing our seaports, constructing new police stations and fire stations, and enhancing our schools and hospitals. But let us also acknowledge the reality. There is much more that needs to be done. Decades of neglect and aging infrastructure. I can't repeat that enough. We have aging infrastructure. You know, the Kingston Public Hospital, my last check is that it is probably over 200 years old. We haven't built a new hospital in 30 years. You know, the Bank of Jamaica building could pass for a museum now. It's been there since the founding of the nation, from independence. And that's the reality. Many of our buildings are sick. They're built so long ago, we haven't maintained them. Our roads, we patch them so often, they are a patchwork. Aging infrastructure. So, decades of neglect, spanning more than 30 years, is not going to be changed overnight. We can't fix the aging infrastructure with a snap of a finger. Jamaica requires sustained efforts, planned efforts. It requires a sustained level of revenues from which the government can launch a capital investment program to reinvest in a sustained way in all our infrastructure. And that is what the government will launch as an important part of its growth strategy. In addition, it is important that the country recognizes that our legacy, or rather our legacy infrastructure, was never designed to withstand what we are seeing today in terms of climate change. Even what we have experienced over the past few weeks in terms of rainfall is highly unusual and off the charts in terms of the impact on infrastructure. So we are facing two challenges at the same time. In terms of our infrastructure, old and aging, that was not properly maintained as a result of 30 years of underinvestment and disinvestment, and then the worsening effects of climate change destroying the infrastructure at an unprecedented rate. I want to point this out to Jamaicans, that this is a crisis. So it's one thing to protest about the bad roads. We understand that. But it is important that every Jamaican understands that the bad roads, it's not just merely as a result of negligent government. It is as a result of years.
Whatever you do it for less.
The impacts of climate change, and that compounds the problem. I'm saying this so that the country appreciates that the government is seeing the problem for what it is and is trying to mobilize the resources to address it. Patching the potholes is not going to address the issue of aged infrastructure. But we must patch the potholes nonetheless. So you see, the challenge of the government, it has to patch the potholes, but it also has to have a plan to properly fix the road. And not just to fix the road for cars to drive on, but we're going to fix the road so that it can withstand the impact of that. Is not going to stop. That is now the new normal that we live with. So the infrastructure that we built, we're building it for cars to drive on, heavy trucks and more cars, but we also have to build it for more rainfall. Hotter times, which affects the asphalt that we lay. We may have to change how we build the roads. We may have to integrate concrete in some areas where we build. That is not going to be done with the snap of a finger. It takes time. And we have to get the budget in place to do that, especially if we're going to do this at scale and pace. And that is why we have to grow, because we are not going to borrow to do this. Otherwise, we would not have learned the lessons that we struggled so hard in the last chapter. That is the imperative of growing the economy. It is important for the country to fully understand why we are in this situation today. The younger members of our population may not have been around, may not have been born, or may be too young to remember. In the mid-1990s, Jamaica faced a financial crisis which resulted in the collapse of a number of financial institutions. This financial sector meltdown was not caused by any exogenous shock or global crisis, meaning it wasn't caused by a pandemic, it wasn't caused by a hurricane, it wasn't caused by commodity price rises. It was caused by bad policy and poor regulation. The financial sector, well, another point to note about this is that the financial sector meltdown happened while there was robust growth in the global economy. And in fact, in the US, the average growth rate in the 90s was 3.4%. So while the rest of the world was doing well, Jamaica was fooling around. Now, the financial sector meltdown of the 90s in Jamaica was a purely homegrown domestic crisis. Our debt to GDP prior to the advent of this crisis was 72%. Can you imagine that? We're just now getting back to that level. The government at the time established FinSAC, the Financial Sector Adjustment Company, to bail out the collapsed financial institutions. This bailout cost the country 40% of GDP. 40% of GDP. So that's like 40 hurricane burials. By way of comparison, the US government bailout of firms during their crisis in 2008, which was a global crisis, in 2008, 2009, cost the US 9% of their GDP. Our financial collapse cost us 40% of GDP. Within 6 years after the establishment of FinSAC, our debt spiraled out of control from 72% of GDP to 130% of GDP. That caused interest costs alone on the debt to consume 60% of tax revenues. So out of every dollar we earned, we paid 60% for debt servicing. If you add public sector wages to that, there was nothing left. Nothing to fix roads, nothing to provide water, nothing to upgrade hospitals, nothing to build schools. So if you wonder why the roads persisted to be bad, government just didn't have any money to spend because it had to pay back this debt. Which is why we cannot go back to those days of incurring debt. So for the next almost 20 years, we basically just meandered along as a country with no attempt to really fix the problem. Our debt situation was already unsustainable when the global financial crisis hit in 2008, 2009, and that took the country to the verge of bankruptcy. It is only over the last decade that we have really focused on addressing the problem. This is the first time since the 1990s that we have been able to get our debt to GDP down to below what it was in the mid-1990s. See that long struggle? It has therefore taken us 30 years to undo the damage of the self-inflicted blow of economic mismanagement. Every Jamaican must reflect on this. Yes, I understand the roads are bad. Yes, I understand the issues with the hospital. I understand all of it. I get it. But I need you to get why it happened and how we are correcting it. There's no other way to correct it but to maintain the tight fiscal rein that we have. There are many pressures on the government to increase this and spend on that, and without recognizing that with one bad policy move, the entire country could be in peril. It's a delicate balancing act to maintain that strong path of fiscal discipline and at the same time pivot to growth. It's important that every Jamaican understands the delicate position that the country is in. We hear massive reserves, $5.8 billion, and everybody says, you can spend it. We hear the debt is going down, so we have fiscal space, you can spend it. Yes, we can spend it, but we have to be so careful. Spend it on what? Spend it how? All the things we need to do, we can't do them all at once. What are we going to make the priority? And how do we sequence everything? And that is what government is about now. It's not about the promises. It's not about the talk. It's not about the wishful thinking. It's about the practical things that we can do to maintain the fiscal responsibility and, to use the netball analogy, to keep that foot planted and you have that ball in your hand and you turn towards the hoop to make the shot, to make that goal. That is what it is about. And you can see when our Sunshine Girls are doing it, they make sure they balance. Balance is important. And that is where we are now. Anything can knock you off when you're about to make that pivot. It's a delicate position. So, this is why previous administrations were not able to maintain the roads and extend their useful life, to maintain the buildings that we have so that we reduce the complaints of sick building syndromes that we hear, to expand the hospitals so that we don't have the issues of people not having space and beds in the hospitals. That's really the reason. So when people say, you have been in power since 2016, why haven't you fixed it? There is a lack of recognition that we inherited a mountain of debt, and we first needed to focus on reducing that debt to create the fiscal space. And it's amazing that people also seem to forget that we had the COVID-19 pandemic that required us to redirect fiscal resources towards the health response. But not just the health response. Jamaica marshaled probably the best social response in the Caribbean. Look, not one let's think about it. Not one Jamaican worker was laid off or their salary cut in the public sector. Think about it. Not one public sector worker was laid off or their salary cut. We mobilized one of the largest care programs. It's amazing what we did. So I just want to point that out. Our strategy in terms of infrastructure development has been to expand economic activity across the island and to create new economic clusters in smaller towns. I want to stop here a little bit and just say to you, you know, the economy is not just Kingston and Montego Bay. We have never really had a strategic plan to create economies across all our parishes. In other countries, that's all local government is about. Local government is about creating a local economy in the area where the people live. They go to the central government to fight for industries to come into their area. Our local governments function mainly as municipal authorities. We have to change that. And that is what we are doing in St. Thomas. In St. Thomas, yes, there was a massive investment to build a road, but building the road was not going to be enough. And therefore, we have built an urban center, and we're going to support that urban center with other economic incentives and programs to make sure that we create an economy in St. Thomas. We're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing in Portland with a massive development plan which will create an economy in Portland. Next, we go to Falmouth and to Lucy, Negril. I'm speaking about what we have plans. But the idea is that every parish must have its economy. And they are all linked and connected by roads and broadband. That's the big thinking strategy. So our strategy in terms of infrastructure development has been to expand economic activity across the island and to create new economic clusters in small towns. And the highways will complement this, and the urban centers will complement this. Eventually, we'll get to the point where we will build a new city in Jamaica. We have already identified the potential areas where that can be done. In another presentation, I'll go into some more details. But that's the spatial plan for our economic development. Every parish will have a solid economy. So even if the national economy gets shaky, you can still have a certain resilience at the local level. I'm particularly happy at the progress that we're making in St. Thomas, and we will be naming a section of that highway that we have built, the Paul Bogle Highway. And I think it is an important tribute to Paul Bogle. It was his revolt that really sparked attention to administration and management of Jamaica and its economy. Very soon, we will commence the implementation of SPARK, the most comprehensive program ever in Jamaica's history for fixing our road network, including community roads. We will do over 600 roads and 600 community roads and 60 main roads. And we are doing this for water as well. $5 billion of the $45 billion will be for the laying of water mains. Like you, I'm very frustrated to see a recently patched road being dug up for pipes or NWC issues. So we have front-loaded the cost of laying the pipes or increasing the size of the pipes already laid. And we're doing the same with broadband access. Every road that we have built that is a main road, there is a conduit, a duct in it for broadband. So our roadway, you can consider it to be a utility corridor. And that's what we're doing for our roads. A major focus of our infrastructure investment going forward will be on energy, and in particular, reducing the cost of energy. We are diversifying our energy mix, expanding renewable energy resources, and increasing energy efficiency across all sectors. Solar, wind, hydroelectric, and other renewable solutions will not only lower cost over the long term, but will also reduce our dependence on imported fuel, making energy prices more stable and predictable. Furthermore, we will promote public-private partnerships and incentivize investments in green technologies. Our goal is to make Jamaica a leader in energy innovation in the region, ensuring that affordable, reliable, and clean energy powers our economy. Now, it's not in my speech, but I will remind the audience that we have signed an MOU with Canadian Nuclear Laboratories to further develop Jamaica's capacity in nuclear. I know that it is a controversial topic, and anything we don't fully understand, we will be doubtful of. But I say to Jamaica, it is better to be prepared that should the technology evolve to the point where it is easily deployed, where the safety of the technology is comparable to any other form of energy, Jamaica should be ahead of everyone else in being able to use the technology here. Jamaica has had a reactor, a small reactor, a slowpoke reactor, for many years at the University of the West Indies. So we do have some capabilities in nuclear. But I think we should invest more in that, seeing that we already have the advantage there by having this reactor at the University of the West Indies. And nuclear is not only about energy, it's also about agriculture, it's about environmental protection, it's about medicine as well. So we are going to develop our capabilities. It may be 10 years before small modular nuclear reactors become easily deployed in countries like Jamaica. But consider this, Jamaica made a positive decision to transition from heavy fuel oils to LNG. We took that decision in 2009. 2009. And we have only made that transition maybe since 2014. So consider the time it will take for us to make the decision now, put the policies in place, get the people trained. You might very well be in alignment when the technology matures. So these are things that we have to be thinking way in advance for. This is not going to win votes today, but Jamaica will be better off for having the capability, even if we don't use it. Now, we're also moving forward with our integrated waste management program on a phased basis. The first phase will involve a public-private partnership for waste collection and transportation, and the second phase will include waste to energy and the construction of a sanitary landfill, at which point we will close Riverton City. You could consider that the process of closing Riverton City has begun, in the sense that we have identified where we're putting our landfill, we have identified the steps and procedures we need to take to decommission the landfill. We are set that we will divest waste collection, garbage collection, municipal waste collection in Jamaica. We are still trying to figure out how we will deal with the waste energy part of things, but we'll come to some conclusion on that very soon. It really pains my heart to see the country looking messy, to drive around and see the plastic bottles all over the place and garbage not being collected. It really does speak to the character of the country. So yes, it is a problem of the inefficient municipal waste collection. But let's be fair to ourselves too. Let's be frank It's also a problem of a culture of not caring about the sanitation and cleanliness of public spaces. And that is a conversation for another time. But I thought I would just mention it here. The fourth pillar of our growth agenda is a national drive to reduce red tape and bureaucracy. That's what they wrote for me. But the fourth pillar is to destroy, tear down the walls of bureaucracy. I'll never forget, in 2007, I was in the lunchroom of Parliament. We were just about to become government. And a senior minister from the opposition, no opposition, then government at the time, said, Andrew, I know you're looking forward to get into government, but you see the bureaucracy of government, it will stymie everything. I know both sides of the political divide shares a view. I know the business sector shares a view. Every single Jamaican shares a view. The Jamaican bureaucracy has become self-serving. It's there to cross the I's and dot the T's and has no concern as to whether or not the country grows. That must change. And you can hear the passion in my voice for that. I cannot pivot without dealing with the muscles of the athlete, which is the bureaucracy. That is what actually gets things done. You know, bureaucracy is not a bad word. When Max Weber developed the concept, and it wasn't merit-based rather than equity. And so it separated man from its achievements. The problem with bureaucracy today is that it's not achieving anything. And it's taking far too long. What has seeped into us is that if it didn't take long, it wasn't well done. That must change. So we're going to be making certain changes in the government to look at, first of all, amending certain pieces of legislation and realigning certain regulations to ensure that they are not obstacles to development, to ensure that they are practical, that they make sense, to ensure that when they were conceived a decade ago to deal with a particular problem, we have to make sure that they are still relevant to today's needs. The bureaucracy must support growth. So, in addition to changes that we intend to make at the executive level, just like we had the EPOC, which was an excellent tool of social consensus in dealing with a major problem to monitor the economic policy. We're going to implement EPOC again. But this time, it will be the Efficiency Program Oversight Committee. Not to be confused. Not to be confused with other announced programs elsewhere. This was in the works long ago. But it's quite clear that, you know, bureaucracies have become a stumbling block to growth, particularly in Western societies. And it is something that has to be looked upon in a very serious way. We're also looking at our tax and custom policies. Let me repeat that. We're also looking to examine our tax laws and customs laws. With a view to streamlining them, making them easier to implement, as well as to provide the right incentives to drive productivity and economic growth. So, for example, we are exploring tax legislation to incentivize the repatriation of businesses, including their activities, associated assets, and profits to Jamaica. There are a number of Jamaican businesses that have set up overseas holding company structures, and we intend to do everything we can to facilitate their repatriation back home to Jamaica by removing legislative and economic barriers. I'm sure all the business people here understand what that means. We'll get into more detail, but you know, dividend policies and so forth, yes, of course, we will be looking at those. We intend to move forward with the consolidation of Jamaica's various payroll taxes into a single payroll tax deduction. Again, talked about. 2 years ago, Minister Clark and myself, we discussed it. We had an agreement. He was tasked to do it. You know what has happened. But the work has begun. And I have now tasked Minister Favour Williams to get it done, and to get it done quickly. In fact, we are looking at a likely implementation in the next fiscal year. We are exploring an increase in the threshold at which small businesses need to register and account for GCT. In 2019, the administration increased the threshold from 3 million to 10 million, and we are looking to further increase the threshold to remove the burden from small businesses. We are re-evaluating the urban renewal tax credit with the aim of enhancing its effectiveness. This involves restructuring its framework and expanding the geographical areas eligible for incentives. So you're likely to see this expand strategically to the urban centers that we are programming the infrastructure development, and to other areas which are showing the natural emergence of urban tendencies. So by doing so, we can attract greater investment into underserved communities, transforming them into vibrant economic hubs. We're also considering accelerated capital allowances to encourage businesses to modernize and retool their facilities, as well as for investments in technology. This measure would support enhanced productivity and competitiveness, especially in key industries that drive our economy. I noticed there was, no clap for this, but I think this is a critical one. Remember, we said that the growth must be inclusive. So the benefits are not just for firms, businesses, and enterprise. We must ensure that our workers and the people are part of this productivity, feel a part of this new mission of growth. So we are examining the removal of taxes on tips. This initiative is aimed at rewarding productivity and excellent service, particularly in sectors like hospitality, where service excellence plays a critical role in our success as a global destination. It would not be limited to hospitality, but extended to all service industries. We are also exploring the establishment of a national infrastructure fund, a vehicle designed to invest in and manage public-private partnership projects. This fund will create new opportunities for institutional investors, such as pension funds, to directly participate in nation building, ensuring that critical infrastructure is built sustainably and strategically for the future. I want to turn now briefly to address the matter of security. Alongside addressing energy costs, we must tackle the significant burden posed by the cost of security. Security-related expenses weigh heavily on businesses, from small enterprises struggling to protect their assets to large corporations investing heavily in safeguarding their operations. And of course, this investment nowadays is not just physical, it is now largely cyber. Our government has recognized the critical need to address the issue head-on. And since 2016, we have significantly ramped up capital investment in security. We have allocated on average $9.7 billion annually, 3 times the average annual investment prior to 2016. These resources have been channeled into modernizing our security forces with better equipment, enhanced intelligence capabilities, and improved infrastructure to boost their visibility and responsiveness. The results are evident. Major crimes, including rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults, have declined by an impressive 60% since 2013, reflecting a long-term trend towards community safety. The murder rate has been a persistent challenge. Thankfully, it is now trending downwards for the 2nd consecutive year. So far, we have a 20% decrease this year compared to 2023 year to date. Of course, last year we had an 11% reduction. The number of active gangs, we have managed to slash that by over 50%, dropping from 350 in 2016 to approximately 170 today. And I just want to pause here, since I have your attention, and just quickly say, we have struggled with murders. Let me use another word. We have struggled with homicides in Jamaica. And sometimes we are inclined to think that, we are a violent society and, violence has pervaded the national consciousness. We have become accepting and permissive of violence to the point where we use violence to resolve conflicts. That is true. But Jamaica really has a gang problem. In other words, over the past 20 years, more than 75% of our murders have been committed by gangs. So it's not really a personal violence problem. Jamaica really has a gang problem. In other words, if we removed gangs from the equation, our murder rate would be probably below the regional average. So the national security strategy is highly focused and targeted on dealing with the gangs. So when we say we have slashed from 350 gangs that our intelligence would have identified to 170, that is a major achievement. And you're going to see more prosecution of gangs to come. Let me be clear, we intend to eliminate all gangs from Jamaica. You are an obstacle to the growth of the country, an obstacle to our economic prosperity. And we intend to deal with you. So the statistics underscore the progress we have made in reducing violence and dismantling organized criminal networks that have long plagued our society. However, we are acutely aware that these improvements in numbers must translate to real and felt security for our citizens and business. So we understand when the polls show that even though murders are declining, people still have this fear. There is a lag. There is a lag. But we are confident that we are on the right path. So to this end, we will accelerate some of our short-term measures with a dual focus on ensuring community security, but also targeting our intelligence, investigative, and prosecutorial capabilities on the gangs. Our ultimate goal is to make Jamaica safer for citizens and business alike. We have hired a brand consultant to look at brand Jamaica. And they will come out with a report, so I don't want to say too much. But they looked at 5 elements of the Jamaican brand. And of course, you know, brand Jamaica is in the top 5 of the most recognized brands in the world. But when you ask, would you visit Jamaica? We are performing just above average, but below our peers. So, and our peers in the region would be the Dominican Republic, Bahamas, Costa Rica. We are just below them. We are above average, but just below them. Would you do business in Jamaica? We are just below average, way below everybody else. Would you study in Jamaica? Below average, below everybody else. Would you invest in Jamaica? Yes, below average, but again, below everybody else. Why? Violence and crime. Who are the people creating this? The gangs. Until the country comes to that recognition and stop turning gangsters into heroes and believing that they are Robin Hood. Yes, they have robbed you of your neighborhood. They have prevented our country from growing. So it's not just about the police developing capabilities to deal with them. The communities need to stop protecting them. Stop giving them succor. Call them out for who they are and what they do. They are not helping us. So, the 6th critical pillar of our growth strategy is ensuring that no one is left behind. This is in keeping with Jamaica's social protection strategy of 2014, which established a social protection floor to provide support to the most vulnerable groups in our society: children, workers, elderly, and persons with disabilities. Growth must benefit all Jamaicans. As I said, big business, small, urban, rural, young, not so young. This inclusive approach will drive our efforts to create economic opportunities that are accessible to every Jamaican. And this means fostering growth that delivers for all sectors of society and building a robust social safety net to protect our most vulnerable citizens. Step by step, we are ensuring that every Jamaican has access to the social protection they deserve. In 2021, we introduced the Social Pension Program, which now provides a guaranteed income for 15,000 vulnerable Jamaicans aged 75 and older. We have increased the investment in the new social housing program, which aims to improve the housing condition of the country's poor and indigent population. We now have over 300 houses handed over or in construction. That's over 1,000 persons benefiting with better housing condition. In 2022, we introduced the Tourism Workers' Pension Scheme becoming the only country in the world with a comprehensive pension plan for tourism workers. Just last week, we launched the Jamaica Entertainers and Creatives Insurance Plan. In the last budget, we increased the allocation to PATH by approximately 30%. And the big one, we are currently working on introducing unemployment insurance. More fundamentally, it is critical that we find a way to enable individuals and families to escape the cycle of generational poverty. We are now working on the implementation of a groundbreaking initiative, the Hope for Children Trust Fund, that I had announced in my last budget presentation. Thousands of our children in low-income families reach adulthood without any household savings to give them a start in life. I want you to just consider that for a moment. There are some persons who will start life with the support of their household wealth. It doesn't have to be a massive fortune. They might start with $1 million, or they might start with some inheritance from a grandparent. How much further along in life and their life chances are going to be compared to someone who reached 18 and there is nothing for them to get? No endowment. So if you talk about the inequality in the Jamaican society, if wealth is passed hereditary, then people who have wealth will always have, and people who don't will always have not. So the only way that we're going to in any way try to correct it is by ensuring that we in some way ensure that those who are the most vulnerable get some endowment to start life. And that's a part of the social consciousness of this administration. It's a part of the inclusive nature of the growth that we're trying to promote. So, the Hope for Children Trust Fund will provide each eligible child with a long-term savings account funded through annual contributions from the government. Parents, guardians, and other donors will also be able to make deposits into the account for the future benefit of the child. The accumulated funds, including interest, will be accessible on or after the child's 18th birthday for specific purposes, such as education, purchase of a home, or commercial property for business investment. The central idea behind the program is to provide children with a lump sum to give them a start in life upon attaining adulthood. Any Jamaican child born on or after the 60th anniversary of our independence, that is August 6, 2022, who is part of a PATH household or a ward of the state, will be eligible for the program. My fellow Jamaicans, we stand at the threshold of an extraordinary opportunity. We have proven that we can overcome challenges when we are united in a common purpose. Together, in just a decade, we have taken Jamaica from the brink of economic collapse to a shining global example of prudent macroeconomic management. Now, let us turn that unity towards building a Jamaica that generates robust, transformative economic growth that creates peace, opportunity, and prosperity for all Jamaicans. Let us use our unity of purpose to create the virtuous cycle. Peace, productivity creates prosperity, and more prosperity creates more peace and productivity. That is where we want to be, in that virtuous cycle. The tagline we are using for this next chapter is Aspire Jamaica. Access to economic opportunity for all, inclusive. S, safety and security. P, people and our focus on human capital development. I, infrastructure development. R, reform of the bureaucracy to improve ease, speed, and cost of doing business. And E, economic diversification and the development of new industries. Let us aspire Jamaica. The next chapter will not happen overnight. Just as it took a decade of dedication to sacrifice, to secure our economic stability, achieve economic independence, achieving economic independence and robust growth will require time, effort, and steadfast focus, attention, and commitment. But history has shown us that when Jamaicans come together as one people, there is nothing we cannot achieve. This chapter is about bold action, shared responsibility.
At Harbor Freight, we do business differently from the other guys. We design and test our own tools and sell them directly to you.
Only stable, but thriving. A beacon of hope, resilience, and opportunity for our people. Let us write this chapter together with confidence and pride, knowing that Jamaica's best days are ahead of us. Thank you, and may God bless Jamaica as we aspire for growth.
Right, what a speech. There's not much more we can say. From basket case to global model of fiscal reform, we have accomplished the mission of stability, but that was not the goal. We still need to fulfill our destiny as a great people. Aspire Jamaica, a nation rising to new heights. Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. And, you know, it's great to have him as our boss. He works much harder than any of us do. He inspires us to do everything that we do. And I'm very grateful that you all stayed and listened to this policy pivot presentation. And I know some of you may have some questions. We're going to open up for a few questions. Just before we do so, there are going to be other sessions, smaller sessions, where we talk through what the Prime Minister has discussed. So, for example, there will be a meeting with the Partnership Council members, so you can go into more details with PM. So if you're a member, you don't need to ask your questions now. There are other opportunities for questions to be asked. And so I'm primarily going to be opening it up to the media, if there's anyone in the media who has any questions in relation to that awesome presentation that was just delivered by the Prime Minister speaking to the new Jamaica. And Naomi, I'll ask you if you see any hands up from the media. I mean, I think they're all just mesmerized by what they just heard.
Okay, I think there's one on that side.
I
Yes.
see the
Dashan
head of the Press
Hendricks.
Association of Jamaica standing up.
Yes. All right, Dashan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. Dashan Hendricks from the Jamaica Observer. I listened to your speech. I really like it. But one thing I want to ask you, in planning, you've mentioned about leveling up the skills of the people. But one of the things that I've not heard is how we are going to have the people to execute the plans. I'm talking about our population aging and declining, and what are the plans that are in place, because it has an economic impact. Just to address that.
Yeah, I'm in a way, I was hoping you wouldn't ask a question like that, because I would have to give you a very long answer. So strategy number one is to get more out of the labor that we have. All right, so I agree with you that the demographic changes in Jamaica is cause for economic concern. And when I meet with the private sector and get into granular details, about their current needs and projected needs, the solutions don't always readily appear to be politically feasible. So what is feasible at the present time is to, one, maximize the productivity of the labor force that we have, and two, make no mistake, there is still a great deal of underemployment in the country. So it's about targeting your skills policy towards improving the skill level of the existing workforce. So there are some kind of structural realignment within the labor force that needs to take place, and the government will act as the catalyst and facilitator for the restructuring of the skills. I mean, let's face it, there are many persons, let's say, who will claim self-employment. But the issue is they're self-employed because they can't be absorbed into the formal labor market. The blocker for that is skills. Now, if we could get them trained, get them into the labor market, you would relieve some of the frictional and structural shortages in the labor market that now exist. In the long term, tax policy, policies for families and housing policies, and health policies will be targeted to address the demographic challenges that we face. And I won't go anymore other than that. I think people, when I've said these words, will understand what I'm saying. So tax policy, housing policy, health policy, I mean, those are the key levers to address this issue of the demographic changes that are presently inimical to our economic program.
Prime Minister, we have another one. Al?
Good evening, Prime Minister. It's a very worthy roadmap to national development, but I guess it presupposes that you will win the next general election. I must say, how much do you think this will cost the nation? And we're not going to do it through debt, as you quite clearly outlined. So how much do you think it would cost? And do you see this going over a space of 2 terms, a term? How long do you see this?
All right, so that's a very good question. We don't propose anything for which we don't know the impact on the fiscal side. So when it comes to, for example, anything that we're proposing for taxes, if you notice, we haven't said, this is it, this is a specific, this is it. You will get that when Minister Favour Williams presents the budget, because the general parameter is that it must not affect the planned downward trajectory of the debt. I will also say to you that most of what we're doing will be revenue neutral. We're trying to make sure that it does not add an additional tax burden. So some of it will be restructuring taxes. A large part of it, however, will rely upon growing the economy. Growing the economy grows revenues, and growing public revenues increases the ability to address the needs of the population. So that's the general strategy that we are employing. The main rule is whatever we're doing fiscally in terms of incentives or support or whatever must not impact the downward trajectory of the debt.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We have another. Andrea?
Thanks, Naomi. Andrea Chisholm from Television Jamaica. Prime Minister, you mentioned the unemployment insurance scheme, and there have been concerns that this proposed new scheme may have an impact on redundancy payment to workers. So my question is, how will this proposed scheme impact the current redundancy laws, if at all?
My understanding of it, and the briefings that I have gotten on it does not suggest that it has any impact on the current redundancy laws. That is something that I will confirm, but my last review of it didn't suggest that there would be an impact. I know that there are concerns in the industry generally for the general reform of our labor laws. But when we contemplated the unemployment insurance, it was not to interfere with what currently exists.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Did I see a hand from a member of the private sector? Mr. Hendrickson, did you? All right, now I think Andrea then has a follow-up.
Just to get an update, PM, on the status of the Office of the Fiscal Commission. I know Mr. Duncan was appointed to serve as the advisory committee chairman. Will that office be getting the sufficient resources it needs to begin operation fully in January? Because there were concerns.
Yeah, we're targeting the 1st of January for full startup. And the question regarding resources, yes, once, this is almost firmly, firmly ingrained in law. So yes, it will be funded appropriately. It is in our interest that it is funded appropriately, actually. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we're closing out now. We're very efficient. We don't have anything to say at the end. We just want to remind you of what the Prime Minister said. This is all about Aspire. It's right here on the screen. Please tell all of your constituents that you interact with about this presentation. It really was full with that roadmap for the future. And I know that all of you here are partners in this, and I thank you all for being here and spending the several hours with us to go through the new Jamaica that we all want to see. So God bless all of you, and God bless Jamaica, land we love. Thank you.
There you have it, Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, addressing the nation on his new capital investment growth of Jamaica. We will go through this at a later time. I think Mr. Rattigan will be going through this tomorrow night on his platform. So let's join Wilfred on his platform tomorrow night. Tonight, I won't be coming on live tonight. I just brought this because I was told that there will be an address to the nation by the Prime Minister of Jamaica, and we listen to him attentively. There are some things in that we need to go through, Mr. Prime Minister. And based on all of this, is Jamaica a better off place? Majority of the Jamaicans will say yes, majority will say no. The security apparatus in our country is something that we need to address, but obviously we're not addressing it as we should. So this has been a live broadcast from the office of the Prime Minister, Jamaica House. The Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, addressed the nation about his economic growth and a next chapter in Jamaica's economic growth. I want to say thank you all for coming on. Thank you all for being a part of this program. On behalf of all of us here of the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And as we always say, may God bless you. May God bless our island home, Jamaica land we love. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Remember to join Wilfred Rattigan tomorrow when he can go into this more detail and dissect it more for you all. God bless you. God bless Jamaica land we love. Good afternoon.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, make we talk, my people, make we talk. When the town becomes an ugly place, don't let it erase the smile from your face. Make we talk, people, make we talk. Conversation is the key, a guiding light for you and me. Spark a talk and you will see. Conflict solver A to Z. World leaders master the art of self-defense just by talk. So people, make we talk. Hey, we're living in a world that on ourselves we must depend. Make we talk. People.
Unity is strength. Make we reason. Make we talk. If we see corruption in any shape or form, we're going to highlight it. Make we talk. Jeffrey Tavares represents Yard and Broad and the entire diaspora. As long as it affects the life of our nation, uncover the truth. Make we reason. Make we talk. And we don't care about no vumva viva va. No upper echelon. Nobody is not above the law. As long as it not help Jamaica. Make we talk. Make we talk.